The council chamber stretched wide like an ancient cathedral, but instead of stone, it was made of light and metal that seemed to breathe. Ambassador Taman stood before creatures from 100 different worlds. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few were just floating masses of color that hurt to look at directly. He wore his formal diplomatic uniform, the dark blue fabric crisp against his aging frame. Earth welcomes the opportunity to join the Galactic Coalition, Taman said, his voice calm and measured. The translator device on his collar hummed, converting his words into 1,000 different languages simultaneously. A massive reptilian creature rose from its seat. Its scales were deep purple, and its eyes glowed like hot coals. This was Threxus, representative of the Vrex Dominion. The Vrex were proud warriors who had conquered 17 systems through ritual combat. "Tell us, human," Threxus hissed, its forked tongue flicking between sharp teeth. "What warriors do you bring to this council? What champions have you bred for battle?" Taman paused. The translation seemed wrong somehow. He glanced at his aide, a young woman named Bi-Ora who specialized in alien cultures. "We don't breed warriors," Taman replied carefully. "We have a professional military. Soldiers who train for years to serve their people." Threxus made a sound that the translator rendered as laughter. "Ah, so you hire mercenaries? How quaint. How many do you employ? A few thousand?" "Earth maintains a standing military of approximately 8 million personnel across all branches," Taman said. The chamber fell silent. Then came confused murmurs. The translator struggled with the concept. The Quillan representative, a bird-like creature with silver feathers, chirped rapidly. 8 million? But that would mean... Surely you mean warriors from 8 million family lines? No, Bi-Ora stepped forward, her voice tight with concern. We mean 8 million individual soldiers. They serve not because of bloodline, but because they choose to. They train constantly, even during peacetime. More confused sounds. A floating jellyfish creature pulsed with bioluminescent confusion. Train during peace? For what purpose? So they're ready when war comes, Taman explained. Threxus laughed again, louder this time. You keep armies when there is no war? How wasteful. How inefficient? How the ... soft? The word dripped with contempt. Perhaps your species is too primitive to understand. When we need warriors, we summon our combat caste. They fight with honor, strength against strength. We don't need frightened little soldiers hiding behind training. Taman's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Bi-Ora touched his arm gently, a warning. They were guests here? They needed to be accepted into the coalition. The council moved on to other topics. Trade agreements, resource sharing, cultural exchange. But Threxus kept watching the humans with those burning eyes. And Taman knew this wasn't over. 3 weeks later, the news came. The human colony of Newholm had gone silent. Then 2 more colonies in the outer reaches stopped responding. When the merchant ship Rising Dawn finally escaped to bring word, the captain was shaking. Vrex warships, she reported to Earth Command. Hundreds of them. They descended on Newholm like a purple storm. They declared the colony forfeit, claimed it as prize of conquest. They said it was a lesson for the weak humans. Captain J1 received his orders aboard the destroyer Indomitable. He was 40 years old, with 20 years of naval service. His face showed nothing as he read the mission briefing, but his executive officer, a Quillan named Pip, fidgeted nervously. Captain, the orders mention rules of engagement Alpha 7 and proportional response with escalation protocols. What do these terms mean? J1 looked at his alien officer. Pip was a good officer, learned fast, adapted well to human procedures. But some things didn't translate. It means we're going to take back our colonies, J1 said simply. But the Vrex have thousands of warriors on those worlds. They're bred for combat, trained from birth in the arts of war. How can we... They're not warriors, Pip, they're a warrior caste. J1 pulled up a holographic display showing the Vrex forces. They fight with honor codes, ritual challenges, personal glory. They're brave, strong, and skilled. Then how do we defeat them? We don't fight them on their terms, J1 said. We're not warriors. We're soldiers. There's a difference. Pip's feathers ruffled in confusion, but J1 didn't elaborate. The fleet was already forming up. 47 human vessels, from massive carriers to small frigates. Each ship moved with precise coordination, sliding into formation like pieces of a puzzle. On the ground, General Haijin briefed her officers. She was 53, her hair more gray than black now, but her eyes were sharp. She had served in 3 different conflicts, commanded troops on 4 worlds, taught at the military academy for 6 years. Behind her stood men and women in combat fatigues, their uniforms marked with unit patches and rank insignia. The Vrex think they've won, Haijin said. They think we'll challenge their champions to single combat. They think we'll land our forces and meet them honorably on the field. They're waiting for a war they understand. A young lieutenant named Min Seo raised her hand. What are we giving them instead, General? Haijin smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We're giving them the professional military response. Contact logistics, I want supply chains established. Contact intelligence, I want complete enemy disposition. Contact fleet command, I want orbital superiority before the first Marine sets foot on the ground. We're not going to fight the Vrex, we're going to dismantle them. In the barracks, Corporal Sung-ho checked his rifle for the 3rd time. His squad watched him, these young men and women who would follow him into combat. A private named Ji-hoon looked nervous. Corp, is it true? The Vrex are unbeatable in personal combat? Sung-ho didn't look up from his weapon. Probably. Good thing, we're not going to fight them personally. He finally met Ji-hoon's eyes. We're going to fight them professionally. Big difference. The fleet departed 3 days later. Dr. Beo-ra watched from Earth, her heart heavy. She had tried to explain to the coalition observers what they were about to witness, but the words wouldn't translate properly. How do you explain doctrine to species who fight by instinct? How do you describe combined arms to cultures that value individual champions? How do you make them understand that humans had turned warfare into a science, complete with textbooks, academies, and centuries of refined theory? She pulled up footage of the fleet departure. The ships moved in perfect formation, not a single vessel out of place. Somewhere on one of those ships, soldiers were drilling. Pilots were running simulations. Officers were studying enemy dispositions and planning operations. Even now, traveling through space toward battle, they were training. They think war is a performance, Bo-ra whispered to the empty room. They're about to learn it's a profession. Garrison Commander Vextel lounged in his command center on Newholm, his purple scales gleaming under the artificial lights. Around him, his finest warriors stood guard, their ceremonial blades crossed over their chests. The humans had built this facility well, all clean lines and efficient design. It would make a fine trophy for the Vrex Dominion. Commander, his second called out. Human vessels approaching the system. Vextel yawned, showing rows of razor teeth. How many? 40? No, 47 ships, Commander. 47? Vextel stood suddenly interested. They send an entire fleet? Good, we shall have a proper battle then. Ready the honor guard. Their champions will want to... Commander, they're broadcasting. The screen flickered. Captain J1 appeared, his face neutral, his voice flat. This is Captain J1 of the United Earthship Indomitable. Commanding the 3rd Fleet? You have occupied human territory illegally? You have 4 hours to evacuate all Vrex personnel from these 3 colonies. This is your only warning. The transmission ended. Vextel stared at the blank screen, then burst into laughter. His warriors joined him, the sound echoing through the command center. 4 hours? A warning? Vextel wiped tears from his eyes. Does this fool not know how war works? Where is his challenge? Where are his champions? Does he think we'll simply leave because he asked nullishly? Should we respond, Commander? No, let the humans posture. They'll realize soon enough that they must face us properly in honorable combat. We have 10,000 warriors on these 3 worlds. The finest fighters the Vrex have bred. They cannot possibly... Vextall never finished that sentence. The facility shook. Alarms screamed. On every screen, red warnings flashed. What's happening? Vextall roared. Our orbital defense platforms. They're gone, Commander. All of them. Destroyed in the first strike. Our ships. The entire orbital fleet is under attack. Vextall watched in disbelief as the battle unfolded on the tactical display. This wasn't a battle. This was execution. Human ships appeared on the edge of weapons range, fired, and vanished before Vex vessels could respond. Missiles came from impossible angles. The proud Vex warships, designed for ship-to-ship combat where warriors could see their enemies, couldn't even get close. 14 minutes. That's how long the Vex orbital fleet lasted. 14 minutes to lose 200 ships. Ready, ground forces? Vextall commanded, his voice shaking. If they want these colonies, they'll have to land. And on the ground, we're unbeatable. In orbit, Lieutenant Min SEO checked her drop pod one final time. Around her, 200 Marines did the same. They wore powered armor, carried weapons that hummed with lethal potential, and moved with the easy confidence of professionals who had done this 100 times in training. Listen up, Min SEO called out. This isn't a fair fight. We're not here to prove we're brave. We're here to take back our colony with minimal casualties. That means we use every advantage. Air support, artillery, electronic warfare, the whole package. Understood? Yes, ma'am, came the unified response. The Vex are warriors. They're strong, fast, and fearless, but they fight like individuals. We fight like a machine. Keep your spacing, watch your sectors, and trust your training. Drop in 30 seconds. The pods launched. 47 different landing zones, carefully selected by intelligence to cut off Vex command and control. This wasn't an invasion. This was surgery. Warrior Kethril saw the pods falling like metal rain. Finally, the humans were landing. Finally, they would have honorable combat. He raised his blade and roared, his voice echoing across the square where 200 Vex warriors stood ready. The first pod opened. A human stepped out, weapon raised. Kethril charged, his powerful legs eating up the distance. 20 meters. 10 meters. 5 meters. He could see the human's eyes through the helmet visor. Then the world turned white. When Kethril's vision cleared, he was lying on his back. His ears rang. Smoke filled his lungs. He tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't work. Around him, warriors lay scattered like broken toys. What was... He gasped. A human Marine appeared above him, weapon trained on his chest. Artillery strike. You're wounded. Stay down or I will put you down. But where is the honor? Where is the combat? The Marine didn't answer. Another Marine approached with a medical kit. They began treating Kethril's wounds with efficient, professional movements. In the distance, explosions continued. Human aircraft screamed overhead. More Marines dropped into the city. Corporal Sungho led his squad through the industrial sector. His tactical display showed friendly positions in blue, enemies in red. The Vex warriors were everywhere, brave and aggressive. They charged human positions without fear, and they died without ever getting close. Contact, Sector 7, his point man reported. Acknowledged. Alpha Team, suppressing fire. Bravo Team, flank right. Charlie Team, request artillery on grid reference 6903. The battle flowed like choreography. Not because anyone was special, but because everyone knew their role. Every Marine had trained for this. Every officer had studied battles just like it. Every unit moved according to doctrine that had been refined over centuries. A Vex champion managed to close the distance, his blade flashing. He was incredibly fast. He killed Private Kim before anyone could react. Then he turned toward Sung-Ho. Sung-Ho didn't draw a knife to meet him honorably. He called in an airstrike. The champion died 2 seconds later, consumed by fire from above. Corporal, was that necessary? A young Marine asked, staring at the burning crater. We're not here to be fair, Private. We're here to win. Move up. Commander Vextall watched his command center fall apart. Reports came in from every sector. Human forces were everywhere. They didn't mass for a single glorious battle. They hit command posts, communication hubs, ammunition depots, power stations. They moved in small teams that coordinated like they shared one mind. How can they do this? Vextol whispered. We have warriors. We have strength. We have honor. His second, bleeding from a head wound, shook his head. They have something else, Commander. They have... I don't know the word. They work together like parts of a machine? Discipline, a voice said. General Hyjin stood in the doorway, flanked by Marines. The word you're looking for is discipline. You have warriors. We have soldiers. You have champions. We have units. You have bravery. We have training. Vextal reached for his blade, but faster than he could move. 3 rifles were pointed at his head. I challenge you to honorable combat, Vextal said, trying to salvage something from this disaster. Denied, Hyjin replied flatly. Surrender your forces? This facility is now under human control. You will be treated according to the Geneva Conventions as prisoners of war. What are these conventions? Rules for how to treat prisoners humanely. Food, shelter, medical care, all provided. Vextal stared at her. In Vrex culture, defeated warriors died gloriously or lived in shame. This human was offering something he didn't understand. A third option. Treatment with ... dignity? I don't understand your kind, Vextal said quietly. I know, Hyjin replied. That's why you lost. The battle for New Home ended in 4 hours and 17 minutes. Every military target destroyed. Every Vrex warrior dead, wounded, or captured. Human casualties, 19 dead, 43 wounded. The Vrex had fielded 10,000 warriors against 2,000 Marines. It shouldn't have been possible. But the Vrex had fought with courage. The humans had fought with doctrine. And doctrine, refined through centuries of professional military development, won. In his cell that night, Vextal ate warm food provided by his captors. A human medic had treated his wounds. A human officer had explained his rights as a prisoner. They were efficient, professional, and terrifyingly calm about everything. He had faced warriors from a dozen species. He had won glory in 30 battles, but he had never been so frightened in his life. Because he finally understood, humans didn't fight to win battles. They fought to achieve objectives. And to them, war wasn't about honor or glory. It was just a job that needed doing. The Coalition Council chamber had never been this quiet. Representatives from 93 different species watched the holographic display in stunned silence. The footage played again. Vrex orbital fleet destroyed in 14 minutes. Ground forces eliminated in 4 hours. Human casualties minimal. Ambassador Taman stood before them, his hands clasped behind his back. His expression was carefully neutral, but inside his heart was heavy. This was not how he wanted Earth to be known. Explain this, Threxus demanded, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. Your kind fights without honor. You attacked from distance. You gave no chance for glorious combat. You treated war like ... Like a job, Dr. Belra said, stepping forward. She had prepared for this moment, but the words still felt inadequate. That's what you're trying to say. We treated war like a job? Precisely, the Quillen representative chirped, his silver feathers ruffled with agitation. War is meant to test strength, courage, valor. Your soldiers showed none of these virtues. They showed all of them, Taman replied quietly. You just didn't recognize how. The council erupted in confused sounds. The floating jellyfish pulsed with red bioluminescence, indicating distress. A crystalline being chimed discordant notes. The translator struggled to keep up with everyone talking at once. Silence, called the council elder, an ancient creature that looked like Livingstone. The human will explain. Bior activated her presentation. Images filled the air above the council floor. You see war as ritual. We see it as science. Let me show you what that means. The first image showed a human military academy. Young men and women in uniform, sitting in classrooms, studying books. This is where we train officers. They spend 4 years learning history, strategy, logistics, leadership, engineering. They study battles from thousands of years ago. They learn what worked, what failed, and why. 4 years? A small mammalian representative squeaked. To teach someone to fight? Not to fight, Burr corrected. To command. To make decisions under pressure. To coordinate hundreds of different elements into one effective force. You don't learn that overnight. The next image showed soldiers on a training field, moving through a complex drill. Every person in perfect synchronization. This is basic training. Every soldier goes through it. They learn to work as a unit. They practice the same movements over and over until they can do them without thinking, so that when battle comes, when fear and chaos arrive, their training carries them through. But where is the individual skill? Threxus protested. Where is the warrior's spirit? It's there, Temin said, but channeled through discipline. A human soldier is brave, just like your warriors. But their bravery is directed, controlled, used efficiently. They don't charge into death for glory. They advance toward objectives using cover and fire support. Aura continued, showing image after image. Field manuals thick as books. Command structures with clear chains of authority. Logistics networks that could supply armies across continents. Medical corps trained to save lives under fire. Engineers who could build bridges in hours. Intelligence officers who gathered information before battle began. You have specialists too, the Quillen observed. We have scouts. We have healers. Yes, but we integrate them, Biora explained. Our medics train with combat troops. Our engineers work with infantry. Our pilots coordinate with ground forces. Every part of our military is designed to support every other part. We call it combined arms warfare. She showed footage from the New Home operation. Artillery strikes supporting infantry advances. Aircraft providing cover while troops moved. Electronic warfare disabling enemy communications while assault teams moved in. See? The Vrex warriors were brave. They were skilled, but they fought as individuals even when in groups. Our Marines fought as one organism, every part supporting the others. This is not war, Threxus said, but his voice was quieter now. This is ... machinery. Yes, Taman agreed. Exactly, yes. We've mechanized warfare. Not just with vehicles and weapons, but with systems. With organization? With doctrine. What is doctrine? The crystalline being chimed. Standard procedures that everyone knows, Ba-Ra explained. When a human squad encounters enemies, they don't have to think about what to do. They have drills. One person suppresses. Another flanks. A third calls for support. They've practiced it 1,000 times. They know what their fellow soldiers will do because everyone trained the same way. In a side chamber, several coalition military observers reviewed the footage privately. A Vrex tactical analyst named Vathron had survived the battle for Newholm. He had been captured, treated well, and now watched the recordings of his own defeat. See here, a human colonel named Sujin pointed at the tactical display. Your forces concentrated in the city center, expecting us to land for a frontal assault? We didn't. We dropped on 47 different locations simultaneously, each team with a specific objective. Not glory. Not honor objectives. Vethron watched himself and his warriors charge human positions. Watch them die to artillery they never saw coming, to aircraft they couldn't reach, to coordinated fire from multiple directions at once. We had numbers, Vethron said quietly. We had strength. You did, Sujin agreed. But we had radios, reconnaissance, air support, clear command structure, pre-planned fire zones, and every soldier trained to the same standard. You had brave warriors. We had a system. Back in the main chamber, Threxus asked the question that everyone was thinking. How do we defend against this? How do we fight an enemy that wages war like this? Taman's response was carefully measured. You don't fight us. We offered peace. We offered friendship. Your leadership chose aggression. The Vrex Dominion attacked our colonies to teach us a lesson about weakness. Instead, you learned something else. What did we learn? Threxus asked. That humanity spent the last 3,000 years perfecting the art of war. We had hundreds of nations on one planet, all fighting each other. We learned through blood and loss. We wrote it all down. We built schools to teach it. We created entire institutions dedicated to studying war. Not because we love war, because we learned that if you're going to fight, you'd better be professional about it. The council elder spoke, his voice like grinding stone. What happens now? Will Earth conquer the galaxy with these professional armies? No, Taman said firmly. We want trade. We want cultural exchange. We want peace. But we also want respect. And we want rules. Rules? Several representatives asked at once. Rules for war, Baor explained. Protections for civilians. Treatment of prisoners. Limits on certain weapons. Proportional response to aggression. If the galaxy insists on having conflicts, we insist they be conducted according to civilized standards. And if we refuse these rules? Threxus challenged. Then you'll fight a professional army that does follow rules, Taman replied. And you saw how that ended? The council elder considered this for a long moment. The Vrex Dominion's supreme warlord has issued a declaration of total war against humanity. He gathers the greatest warrior fleet in Vrex history. 400,000 warriors strong. Taman's expression didn't change. We know. We've been tracking it. You don't seem concerned. We're always concerned when violence is necessary, Taman said. But we're not worried about the outcome. The Vrex have warriors. We have doctrine, logistics, intelligence, combined arms, air superiority, electronic warfare, and soldiers trained to work as one force. Warriors fight with their hearts. Soldiers fight with their training. And training defeats courage when courage doesn't have a plan. In orbit above Newholm, Private Ji-hoon stood guard over the prisoner compound. Inside, thousands of captured Vrex warriors received food, medical care, and shelter. They were confused by this treatment. Confused by guards who were professional rather than cruel. Confused by enemies who followed rules even when their enemies did not. A Vrex warrior named Kethril, his legs healing from the artillery strike, approached the fence. Human, he called. May I ask you something? Ji-hoon nodded. He was 19 years old, just finished with his training 6 months ago. But he wore his uniform properly, kept his weapon maintained, and followed procedures. You could have killed us all, Kethril said. Why didn't you? Ji-hoon thought about his answer. Because the objective wasn't to kill you. The objective was to secure the colonies. You just happened to be in the way. Once you surrendered, you weren't combatants anymore. You were prisoners. And we have rules about how to treat prisoners. Even enemies? Especially enemies, Ji-hoon replied. That's what separates soldiers from murderers. We only fight when necessary, and we stop when the objective is achieved. Kethril stared at this young human who spoke of killing with such calm professionalism, who followed rules even in war, who treated defeated enemies with dignity. I begin to understand, Kethril said slowly, why we lost. Supreme Warlord Kreth stood on the bridge of his flagship Eternal Glory, watching his fleet assemble. 3,000 ships. 400,000 warriors, the largest military force the Vrex Dominion had ever gathered. Every warrior was from the finest bloodlines, trained from birth in the arts of combat, eager to restore Vrex honor. Today, Kreth announced to his assembled commanders, we show these humans what true warriors can accomplish. We show them that machines and systems and rules cannot stand against courage and strength. We will crush their fleet, land on their worlds, and prove that honor triumphs over cold professionalism. His commanders roared approval, their voices echoing through the chamber. This would be glorious. This would be legendary. This would be everything the previous failure was not. In a command center light years away, General Haijin reviewed intelligence reports with her staff. The holographic display showed the Vrex fleet in perfect detail. Every ship tracked. Every communication intercepted. Every movement predicted. "They're coming straight at the Outer Reaches border," Colonel Sujin reported. Intelligence had been her specialty for 15 years. No deception, no subtlety, just raw force moving forward. "Typical," Admiral Kyung-ho said. He commanded the human fleet, 40 years of naval experience making him calm where others might panic. "They think numbers will overwhelm us. Let's show them why that's wrong," Brigadier Sang-woo added. He led the ground forces, and his practical approach to warfare had made him legendary among the troops. Haijin studied the disposition. "We have 3 weeks before they arrive. Recommendations?" What followed was not a war council filled with dramatic speeches. It was a planning session. Officers discussed logistics, ammunition requirements, fuel consumption, medical supply distribution, communication protocols, and contingency plans. They spoke in technical terms, referenced field manuals, and built their strategy on doctrine refined through centuries. An alien observer, allowed to witness the planning, couldn't understand what he was seeing. Where were the passionate speeches? Where were the appeals to courage? These humans discussed war like accountants discussed budgets. 3 weeks later, the Vrex Honor fleet arrived at the border. Kreth's flagship led the formation, 3,000 ships arranged in perfect ceremonial order. It was beautiful. It was glorious. It was completely vulnerable. Commander Yoon-young sat in the electronic warfare center aboard the Indomitable, watching her screens light up with data. Every Vrex communication was being intercepted. Every transmission recorded. Every command structure mapped. "We have complete signal intelligence," she reported to Captain J1. "They're not even encrypting most of their communications. They think it would be dishonorable to hide their intentions." J1 shook his head. "Give their entire command structure to fleet operations. Let's make use of their honesty." The Vrex expected a frontal assault. They expected human ships to meet them in glorious combat, fleet against fleet. What they got was something entirely different. Human vessels appeared at maximum weapons range and fired. Not in formation, not for glory, just cold, calculated strikes at precisely identified targets. Missiles launched from positions the Vrex couldn't reach. Railgun rounds crossed space at relativistic speeds. Laser batteries targeted specific systems on specific ships. The Vrex tried to close the distance. They were brave. They were determined. They were also being destroyed in detail. Lieutenant Seungri led his fighter squadron through the chaos. His wingmen flew in perfect formation, not because they were showing off, but because that's how they trained. Every day, every mission, the same drills until they became automatic. "Target the command ships," Seungri ordered. "Deny them coordination." The fighters swept through the Vrex fleet like surgical instruments. They didn't dogfight. They didn't seek glory. They identified targets, eliminated them, and withdrew before the Vrex could respond. When Vrex fighters tried to engage, human fighters used superior coordination and communication to isolate and destroy them. "This isn't combat," a dying Vrex pilot transmitted. "This is murder." "No," Seungri replied, though he knew the alien probably couldn't hear. "This is war. Real war. Not the ritual you expected." Supreme Warlord Kreth watched his beautiful fleet die. Ships exploded before they could fire a shot. Formations broke apart under precise strikes. His warriors showed incredible bravery, charging forward despite losses. But bravery couldn't overcome physics and mathematics. "How are they doing this?" he roared. "We outnumber them." His tactical officer's voice shook. "They're not fighting like a fleet, Supreme Warlord. They're fighting like one organism. Every ship knows what every other ship is doing. They share targeting data. They coordinate fire. When we engage one vessel, 3 others are already maneuvering to support it. Then we land. We take their ground forces." But the ground battle was worse. The Vrex dropped on the disputed colony of Jericho's Landing with overwhelming numbers. 10,000 warriors in the first wave. They expected the humans to meet them on the field. Instead, they got Sergeant Young-Soo's platoon. Young-Soo had been a soldier for 12 years. He was not the strongest human. He was not the fastest. He was not the bravest. But he was professional. He knew his job. He had trained for situations exactly like this. "Let them land," Young-Soo ordered. "Fall back to prepared positions. All units, weapons hold until they enter kill zones." The Vrex warriors advanced, expecting resistance. They found empty streets, abandoned buildings, no enemies to fight. Their confusion was understandable. They had prepared for battle, not for this eerie silence. Then the mortar started falling. Artillery from hidden positions. Mines that had been placed weeks ago. Sniper fire from concealed positions. Every approach was covered. Every avenue was zeroed. The Vrex weren't walking into a battle. They were walking into a trap that had been planned by professionals. A Vrex champion named Drex managed to reach human positions. He was the finest warrior of his generation, undefeated in 200 duels. He crashed through a barricade, his blade ready, his roar shaking the air. Corporal Sung-ho didn't fight him. He called in an airstrike. Drex died 3 seconds later, his skill meaningless against precision munitions delivered from altitude. "Corporal," a young Marine said, watching the smoke clear. "That seemed excessive." "That seemed professional," Sung-ho corrected. "We're not here to prove anything. We're here to win. Now move up, we have more ground to cover." The battle lasted 96 hours. When it ended, the Vrex Honor fleet was shattered. Not defeated, shattered? Nearly 300,000 casualties. Thousands of ships destroyed or captured. The survivors were processed as prisoners of war, given medical care, food, and shelter according to the rules that humans insisted upon. Human losses were significant by human standards. 47 ships destroyed. 2,300 personnel dead or wounded. But the ratio horrified the galaxy. The Vrex had brought overwhelming force and been destroyed by a smaller fleet that fought with coordination, planning, and professional precision. Supreme Warlord Kreth found himself kneeling before General Hyjin in a prisoner processing center. Around him, human soldiers worked efficiently, cataloging prisoners, treating wounds, organizing the captured warriors into manageable groups. "Kill me," Kreth begged. "Restore my honor through death. Challenge me to ritual combat. Give me a warrior's end." Hyjin looked at him with something like pity. "You'll stand trial for initiating aggressive war. If convicted, you'll serve your sentence. If acquitted, you'll go free. We don't execute prisoners for honor. We have laws. We have procedures. This is how civilization works." "I don't understand," Kreth whispered. "I know," Hyjin replied. "That's why you lost. You brought warriors. We brought soldiers. You brought courage. We brought systems. You brought glory. We brought doctrine. And in the end, the side that treats war as a profession will always defeat the side that treats it as theater." That night, across the galaxy, every species watched the battle recordings. They watched human forces operate with mechanical precision. They watched coordination that seemed impossible. They watched an outnumbered force destroy a larger one through superior organization, training, and doctrine. The Quillen representative watched from his homeworld, his silver feathers trembling. "They didn't just win," he chirped to his staff. "They made it look easy. And that's terrifying." A young human Marine, wounded but recovering, was interviewed by Galactic media. The reporter, a crystalline being, asked how he felt about the victory. "I feel sad," the Marine admitted. "A lot of beings died. That's always sad. But we had a job to do. We did it as professionally as we could. We followed our training. We supported each other. We achieved our objectives. That's what soldiers do. You don't celebrate?" "We remember," the Marine said quietly. "We remember the cost. We remember the fallen. And we train harder so that next time maybe fewer people die. That's the difference between warriors and soldiers. Warriors seek glory. Soldiers seek effectiveness." And when war is unavoidable, effectiveness saves more lives on both sides. 6 months after the Battle of Jericho's Landing, the Coalition Council looked different. The representatives still sat in the same chamber, but something had changed. The casual arrogance was gone. When Ambassador Taemin spoke, they listened. "We come before you today not as conquerors," Taemin said, his voice carrying through the chamber, "but as partners who have learned hard lessons that we wish to share." The crystalline being chimed. "You defeated the Vrex twice. You could demand anything. Why do you ask for so little?" "Because we don't want territory," Taemin explained. "We don't want tribute. We want something more valuable. We want peace that lasts. And for that we need rules that everyone follows." Dr. Bio-Ra displayed the proposed treaty. It was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Rules for warfare, requirements for declaring war, protections for civilians, treatment standards for prisoners, proportional response guidelines, prohibition on certain weapons, requirements for post-conflict rebuilding. "You want to regulate war?" the Quillen representative asked, confused. "How can you regulate combat?" "We've been doing it for centuries," Bio-Ra replied. "War doesn't have to be unlimited destruction. It can be controlled, directed, made less horrible while still achieving political objectives." Not everyone agreed. The Kelthoran Prides, a species that had built their entire culture around martial excellence, saw the treaty as an insult. Their War Master Thel stood and spoke with barely controlled rage. "You want to turn war into paperwork," Thel said. "You want to remove honor glory, the test of true strength. We refuse. The Kelthoran way has served us for 10,000 years. Then the Kelthoran way," Taemin said carefully, "will leave you behind. The galaxy is changing. You can change with it or be swept aside." 3 weeks later, Kelthoran forces attacked a coalition world, deliberately targeting human facilities. It was a challenge. A test. War Master Thel believed that Kelthoran warrior spirit would triumph where Vrex strength had failed. He was wrong. The human response was not led by General Hyjin. She had moved to other duties, establishing the Coalition's first multi-species military academy. Instead, Colonel Sujin commanded the operation. She was younger, less experienced. But she had the same training, the same doctrine, the same professional approach. "That's the point," Hyjin explained to visiting Coalition observers. "In warrior cultures, everything depends on the individual champion. When the champion falls, the army fails. In professional militaries, any properly trained officer can execute the same operations. The system is stronger than any individual." The battle demonstrated this perfectly. Sujin used the same combined arms approach, the same coordination, the same precise application of force. The Kelthoran warriors were incredible fighters, faster and stronger than humans. In individual combat, they won almost every engagement, but Sergeant Young Soo, now training alien forces, had taught his lesson well. Don't fight them individually. Fight them systematically. When a Kelthoran champion killed 6 human soldiers in close combat, the 7th called in artillery. The champion's superior fighting skills meant nothing when the entire grid square was destroyed. When Kelthoran forces massed for a charge, they met not heroic resistance but coordinated fire from multiple positions. When they tried to flank, they found positions had been prepared weeks in advance. With overlapping fields of fire and pre-registered target zones, the battle lasted 4 days. The Kelthoran lost 60% of their invasion force. Human casualties were significant but manageable. More importantly, the humans had proven their point. This wasn't about General Hyjin being brilliant. This was about a system that worked regardless of who implemented it. War-Master Thel, captured and wounded, expected execution. Instead, he was offered something unprecedented. "You can die," General Hyjin told him in the prison hospital. "That's your right under Kelthoran tradition. Or you can attend our military academy. Learn why you lost. Take that knowledge back to your people." "Why would you teach your enemies?" Thel demanded. "Because we don't want enemies," Hyjin replied. We want a galaxy that understands how to fight only when necessary and how to fight effectively when war is unavoidable. A galaxy where everyone follows the same rules, where civilians are protected, where conflicts are resolved efficiently rather than dragging on for years. Fell chose the academy. 2 years later, he graduated, transformed. He returned to his people not to teach them to be human, but to show them how to organize, train, and fight as professionals. The Kelthoran would always value martial skill, but now that skill was channeled through doctrine, planning, and coordination. Across the galaxy, the transformation continued. Lieutenant Junsu found himself training Qoilan defense forces. His students struggled at first. "Why must we practice the same movements over and over?" they asked. "Because when battle comes, you won't have time to think. Your training will carry you through. You'll know what to do because your body will remember." Why do we study battles from the past? Because those who forget history are doomed to repeat its mistakes. Every battle teaches lessons. Every defeat shows what not to do. Every victory shows what works. Why can't we just fight bravely when the time comes? Hyamsu paused at that question. He remembered being young, asking similar things. Bravery without discipline is suicide. Discipline without training is worthless. Training without doctrine is chaos. We combine all three. That's what makes us professional. Slowly, the galaxy began to understand. Species adapted at different rates. Some embraced the new approach quickly. Others resisted. But none could ignore the simple reality. Professional militaries defeated warrior cultures with brutal efficiency. The human military academy on Earth expanded to accept alien students. Vrex warriors who had survived the battles became instructors, teaching others what they had learned. Former enemies now trained side by side. Bound by common doctrine and professional standards, Corporal Sung Ho, promoted to Sergeant Major, found himself teaching the first class of alien professional sergeants. These would be the backbone of their forces, the experienced professionals who would train the next generation. "You are not warriors anymore," he told them on their first day. "You are soldiers. Warriors fight for glory. Soldiers fight for objectives. Warriors seek individual honor. Soldiers seek mission success. Warriors die gloriously. Soldiers try to live to fight another day. This is your path now. This is the profession you've chosen." Captain J1 commanded the first joint species fleet. Human, Vrex, Quillan, and even Kelthoran ships working together under common doctrine. The first exercises were rough. Cultural differences created friction, but doctrine provided a common language. Standard procedures allowed different species to work together effectively. Ambassador Tae-min, elected Coalition Secretary General, presided over a changed galaxy. The constant ritual wars had decreased. When conflicts arose, they were fought according to established rules. Civilians were protected. Prisoners were treated humanely. Wars ended faster because professional militaries understood how to achieve objectives efficiently, but not everyone was happy. In a remote sector, a young Vrex named Keth approached Dr. Bora with a question that had been troubling him. "Doctor, does this mean humans are the greatest warriors in the galaxy?" Bora smiled. She had been expecting this question for months. "No, Keth, it means we learned something the hard way. Through centuries of devastating wars on Earth, through mistakes that cost millions of lives, through trial and error and blood, what did you learn? That warriors aren't enough. You need soldiers. Professionals who train constantly, follow doctrine, work as teams, and remember that war isn't about glory. It's about achieving objectives with minimal loss of life on all sides. That's what makes us different. Not that we're better at war, that we're better at ending it." Keth thought about this. "And you're teaching us these methods? Even though it makes you less special?" "Especially because it makes us less special," Bo-Ra said. "We don't want to be the only professional military. We want everyone to be professional. Because professional militaries fight efficiently. They follow rules. They protect civilians. They know when to stop. Warrior cultures fight until exhausted or destroyed. Professional armies fight until objectives are achieved, then stop. A monument was erected at Coalition headquarters. It listed every being who died in the conflicts that led to the new era. Human, Vrex, Quillen, Keltharan, and others. At the dedication ceremony, honor guards from every species stood together, all wearing the standardized uniforms of the Coalition Military Academy. General Hai-Jin, now retired and teaching, gave the dedication speech. Her hair was white now, her movements slower, but her eyes were still sharp. "We stand here not to celebrate war," she said, "but to remember its cost. Every name on this monument represents a life ended too soon, a future lost, dreams unfulfilled. We cannot bring them back, but we can honor them by learning from their sacrifice." She gestured to the diverse soldiers standing at attention. These beings come from species that were once enemies. Now they train together. They learn the same doctrine. They follow the same standards. They understand that true strength lies not in individual combat prowess, but in professional discipline.